again, I am going to start with a little bit of movement so we can get our spines moving before we even start anything, because I think it would be nice. We have beautiful, it's nice and warm and not a stitch of wind. Sunny South Africa. Right, so I'm very excited to do spines. Just like I'm excited to do shoulders, and just like I'm excited to do hips and knees, and I just love doing things like this because I love sharing everything that I've learned and everything that we've put together and all of the tests that we've done. And I also love looking at all of the additional information that's out there, and I love conflicting ideas. You know, trying to get behind why people see things that way, and what proof do they have, and what studies have they looked at, and how credible do I feel the studies were, and who was conducting them. That's really important for me, especially if you have been in a situation where you've hurt your back before, specifically pertaining to backs, or you've been in a situation where you've hurt your shoulder before. There we go. Right, we're back. Okay. So as I was saying, I love looking at all the various information, and then what's the most important thing for me always when we look at a topic-based course is, I mean, the theory is awesome and we love learning all the new things and what is extrusion and protrusion, but when your clients start moving and you start moving various different client spines, and it doesn't give you the same information as what you read in any literature, and whatever you've read about some study which says just let it go and let the people move, and every time you do that this client is in terrible pain, that's clearly not working for them. So I want us to be able to move our clients in such a way that it is specific to them, and the clients who are capable of doing more, we allow them to do more, but within specific boundaries. And those who we know, I always say rather safe than sorry whenever it comes to the spine, because I never want to be the one responsible for somebody landing up at the chiro or the physio or the doctor for that matter, because I took it too far. We want to learn in this course, I really want you to learn about freeing up the spine, successfully training the spine, strengthening the spine, and then looking at what kind of back training can we do for our clients with various issues, because we get those all the time. If we're training our clients and they've had a spinal fusion, what would be the best way forward to avoid the most possible risk of any injury or risk of creating a scenario that you cannot turn back from? So I really want us to go through that today. But before we start any of that, I really want us to start moving. So wherever you are, I want us to free up the spine. I want us to let everything go. And I just want us to get our own bodies moving, because as soon as we get our own bodies moving, our brain, my brain, works better. And then I've got more info to give you. So I've got 3 hours today. We'll see how well I do with that. All right. So where you are, Carly, you can sit at the back. We're just going to start with a gentle neck release, and then we'll go into a spinal release. And you're going to keep this, you're going to get this recording so you can watch it over and over so that you don't miss it. And I'm going to teach you so much more repertoire and exercises. One of the things that we always look at, especially when we're marking exams or we're helping a professional get to that next level, is I want you to have the theory. Great, give it a tick. But what are you going to do with that theory? We need to put it into the person in front of you. And if you guys have done any work with us before, you'll know that that goes even further, and we're looking at who we're dealing with and what their mindset is like, and what are their everyday activities like, and what is their personality type like, and all of this affects the spine. Also have a look at people's daily living movements, their activities of daily living, and that will tell you why the spines are in such bad condition. But the fact that just through movement, I mean, if I take somebody who is incredibly stiff and stuck in their spine and I just mobilize it for half an hour, it is literally like they have taken a happy drug. And afterwards they go, that was amazing. That feels so good. I just feel so relaxed, and I just feel like there's so much tension that's left my body. And that's what I want you to get out of this as well, which is why we've got the spinal mobility program. So we're going to look at the biomechanics. We're going to look at the anatomy. We're going to look at the various conditions. We're going to look at mobilizing it, strengthening it, and creating client-specific programs. And then I'm going to give you so many repertoire ideas for the spine. In fact, I have to stop myself because every time I'm like, oh, that feels good, I need to add that in. Or, oh, let me make a note of that one because I definitely want to teach you guys that one, because it just doesn't stop. I think I do a spinal thing for myself every day. We did an Instagram post, I think it was 2 days ago, sitting on a chair, and I'll tell you how that happened. And that's why I always say, act on inspired thought. When something comes to your head, just go, I need to do that. Everybody needs to know about that. And I was writing manuals. In fact, I'm not going to lie, I was editing this manual for this course because it's never perfect enough for me and I'm always changing stuff. And it was a full day of sitting behind that computer. And I just took the chair and I was like, oh my word, I need to release. Oh, when I pull this leg over, it feels so good. When I open this out, it feels amazing. I need to share it. So that was that post on Instagram. You can go and look at it. All right. So let's start with releasing our neck and our shoulders. And then I'm also going to, in this course, discuss who should not be releasing their neck. I will also tell you about a client that I'm working with right now who I've actually asked him to stop stretching his neck because he does it all the time. And I will teach you why. So most important whenever we do any kind of stretching is we really want to get the muscles to pull from origin to insertion. So I want you to think of where upper trapezius is, where the scalenes are, where the levator scapula is, and where the rhomboids are. And that will give you an idea of why I really want you to focus on just sitting in a really good thoracic spine position to the best of your ability. Never overdo your neck retraction because this is not natural. None of us can walk around like this. So you're just going to relax your neck so that it just bobs on the top of your head bobs on the top of your neck. From there, relaxed shoulders. Don't press them down. Just let them hang with gravity. Imagine 2 sheets of glass, one behind you and one in front of you, and you cannot break them. You're going to take your ear over to your shoulder. I didn't rotate in any direction, just straight over. And you're pulling all of the muscles on this side that create that lateral flexion. So I want you to think of the splenius capitis and cervicus, the scalenes, upper trapezius as well is also getting a good pull. 2 fingers on your head because our vertebrae of the neck are nice and delicate. So we're not going to tug it like we used to when we were moshing in the old days. So we're going to pull that over. This is important. I create that space. And I expose that underarm. Why? Because I pull that levator scap and upper trapezius away. To increase this side stretch, you could raise your arm up and you'll feel how that stretch changes. But you need to expose that underarm so that the serratus can pull that scapula around and away. And now we're stretching into that levator scap and upper trapezius beautifully. Do not do this. The stretch will disappear completely. Keep this arm up if you can. If not, you can lower it down. Gently rotate your head in between those 2 sheets of glass and slowly pull it down. Can you feel that stretch? Oh my word, I can feel it so nicely in the levator scap right now. So you're pulling it down there. I want you to lower that arm and feel the difference, how that stretch changes. Which is why it's so amazing that if your client can raise their arm up above shoulder height with a good scapula, let them do it when they're doing the neck stretch, because I'm getting that pull down of the scapula. So it's pulling that levator scap and upper trapezius. Gently bring your head back to the front. Now you're going to keep your head in between those 2 sheets of glass. You can lower this arm and you're going to rotate your head up to the ceiling without poking your chin forward. You're going to bring it back to the center. I want you to close your jaw, and it's like you want to reach your head back to the top corner of the ceiling and get that beautiful stretch in your sternum. And then bring it back, bringing it up. Over to the other side. We gently take the head over. 2 fingers, Terry, I'll get to you now. Gently pulling it down, elbows slightly forward, exposing that underarm. 2 fingers, and it's a gentle pull. You can float this arm up and really scoop that scapula. If you're not feeling that stretch, I would then have a look at what your scapula is doing, whether it's getting that scoop and exposing that underarm. That would be really important. You're going to hold that. Gently rotate the head in between those 2 sheets of glass, pulling it down. Remember, the shoulder is relaxed and both underarms are exposed. You're going to bring it back to the center. Bring this arm down. Rotate that head up to the ceiling in between those 2 sheets of glass. Just a little bit without poking the chin. Bring it back to the center. And then release this arm back down. From there, closing the mouth, reaching the head back just to get into that sternum without changing my body. So I'm not leaning my torso over. This is nice and solid so that the mobility can be in the neck. And then lift your chin up for me, ladies. Don't look to the side so much. It's an up and back. So watch my neck and make sure that you're doing that position. And then slowly bring it back up. Loosening the neck up, I want you to rotate it to the one side as far as you can. And if you do, you will feel the opposite sides rotate, stretching. Over to the other side as far as you can. And gently rotate. And other side, rotate. And other side, rotate. And I'm still tall in my back, rotate. And bringing it back to the center. Just to loosen up the lateral spine, I want you to gently I'll sit on here so you can see. I want you to gently just reach the torso over as far as you can and bring it up. And then reaching it over. It's like I really want to bring this rib close to the hip and bring it up. Don't flex the spine and gently reaching it over. And bringing it up and slowly over and bringing it up. Cross the hands over your chest. You're going to rotate 1 and over 2 and rotating 3 and reaching 4. My hips are still 5 and bringing it back 6. Bring it into the center. Hold it. Reach your arms up to the ceiling for me as high as you can. And I want you to open your chest out. And then you're slowly going to bend your elbows, chin in, roll all the way down through the spine. Gently bringing it back up. Really getting those arms next to your sides, reaching it up, arching the back, reaching those arms behind you, exposing the underarms. Bringing it back, gently bringing the arms down, chin in, rolling down through the spine. And we bring it back up, reaching the arms up as high as you can, opening the chest out and bringing it up and gently releasing it down. I want you on your knees if you can for me, please. If you've got a foam roller nearby, please grab it for me now. You're going to have the foam roller in front of you. So I'll just give you 2 seconds to quickly grab it. And I absolutely love this. So we want the spine. Everybody's always scared of getting that spine to do extension. We actually want to teach the spine to do that controlled extension, to get those muscles kicking in. Okay. So from here, you've got the foam roller in front of you. Chin goes into the chest. We roll down. Hands go onto the foam roller. Flex the spine as far as you can. It goes onto my arms. I start lifting up and I extend the back. So I'm really extending my spine as much as I can. I'm going to roll it all the way back. Here, I want to curve back up and just restack it. Chin in, we gently curve down through the spine, reaching that foam roller away, extending the spine as we come up, and gently pulling it back, curving up through the spine. This next one's a bit trickier, but it's really amazing. You're going to roll down. I want you to release your right hand, get it underneath that left arm, and put that shoulder down on the bed. My left arm is resting on the foam roller. We're going to bring it all the way back, rolling up through the spine and restacking it up. And remember, that's why I love teaching shoulders so much, is because all of those principles are going to kick in here as well. We're not going to be doing these stretches like that. Chin in, we roll down. We get that left arm under the right arm. We gently reach it away, resting the body on the mat. And then I slowly bring it back. And I restack it back up. Chin in, curving through, right hand under that left arm, right shoulder goes onto the mat, getting that beautiful stretch and rotation, and gently controlling it back up. And again, chin in, we gently curve down. Left arm under that right arm, getting that rotation and rest on the bed. Gently curving it back and restacking it up. Gently pressing that foam roller away. I want you to go on your hands and knees for me. And all you're going to do is you're going to drop your left elbow. That's all, the left elbow. And you're going to just reach the arm up a little bit out to that side. And then slowly reach under this arm and try and drop that shoulder on the bed. And we bring it out just on that diagonal line. And I'm pushing out of that shoulder. And I rotate it through, and we're just getting that rotation in the spine. Bring it back to the center. Hold. Go down on that right arm. We reach that arm out into that diagonal line. We bring it all the way through, dropping that shoulder down onto the bed. And we bring it up again and just reaching that diagonal line. And bringing it all the way, dropping that shoulder down onto the bed. Gently bringing it back here into the center. I want you to curve your spine for me as deep as you can in that lumbar spine to the best of your ability. So I've got those abs holding on there. And then start the movement by uncurling that lumbar spine. And now I want you to do what we normally don't encourage. And I want you to super arch your back without poking those shoulder blades. We're going to start with a pubic bone. It's going to curl through, rounding up. My shoulders are relaxed. There's not a lot of effort in them whatsoever. And then you're slowly going to just take that coccyx back and extend the back to the best of your ability. So I want you to think of your coccyx pulling closer to your shoulder blades. And then you're gently going to curl it through to the best of your ability. Now walk your hands forward for me, please. And I want you to lower the pelvis down so that it actually rests onto the mat. But I've lifted out of my shoulders. I'm not collapsed. So I've lifted out of my shoulders there. We're going to lift the pelvis up first. Look at that. That's something that we never want people to do, but we should get them to do it if they don't have any anterior issues. Curving it through. I want you to round your back, bringing it forward, staying lifted out of the shoulders as you get there, and then sticking the bum out as you take it back. Last one. And tucking it through, lifting out of the shoulders. Really opening the chest out. So I'm not collapsing here. I'm still maintaining that pull away. And then we're going to pull it through into a curved spine. and then gently release it back down. So here, abs grab you and they curve you up, and they release back down. And then last one, abs pull through, taking it all the way back, and then slowly rolling up through the spine. That should feel good. I feel ready to impart some information. You have got 3 manuals that you printed. The big one, the mobility one, and the Act on Inspired Thought one. So we're going to work with this big, we're going to work with all of them. The Act on Inspired Thought is every time she comes up with something that's not in the manual, I'm going to put it in here. And every time I have questions, I'm going to write them down here so that I can email them. Or if you're not going to write them in here, you can put them in the chat, and Taryn's going to keep all of those and send it to us. All right. Then we're going to start with the protocol, and then we're going to move over to the mobility manual. All right. Let's get going. The most important thing that I want us to remember is we do not want to box all of our clients into 2 or 3 spinal blocks, because everybody's body is different, and they might have gotten this from their grandfather and that from their grandmother. This one might be hypermobile in lumbar and not so mobile in thoracic. And I want you to be able to work with the spine that's in front of you. That is the most important thing, so that we don't get, the moment we get lost is when we try and generalize people's shoulders, spines, and hips. And we're not able to do the critical thinking of what is actually going on inside their body right now. So the first page says, there are many factors that influence the mobility and range of the spine, hereditary restrictions, or merely due to negative spinal mechanics and your activities of daily living. We know that the pelvis forms the bridge between the spine and the hips. And because the spine has such a strong connection to the pelvis, whatever the pelvis does is going to affect the spine, which is why we first did the pelvic stability webinar, the protocol, and now we're going on to the spine. You've done shoulders if you have, and that means that the shoulders have told you how you will move your arms when you move your spine, because your thoracic spine and your shoulders go hand in hand. You studied the pelvis, so you know what stability is required there. And now we get to do the section that links these 2 areas, which is pretty amazing. Right. So before we do anything, I want to break down 3 concepts for you. The first one is a concentric contraction, eccentric work, and eccentric control. We know that a concentric contraction is a shortening contraction of a muscle. That contraction can either be low load, medium load, or high load. Just the position of your body will change that load. If I lie on my back and I do a bicep curl, I will have to have something in my hand there to pull in order to get the bicep to have the same effect that it would if I was sitting up here and pulling. The spine works in exactly the same way. We have the eccentric control of the spine, where the spinal extensors control this movement of the spine so that you don't just drop your body down to the floor. There is a controlled movement as you roll down. That's eccentric control. It's really low load. It doesn't need a lot of muscle fibers, or let's say it doesn't need a lot of energy to maintain that movement. However, as soon as I put weights in a client's hand and I ask them to then do a roll down, I'm now training the back muscles to strengthen eccentrically, to strengthen in their lengthened position. And we call that, if you have a look in your book there, it's got eccentric control and eccentric work, where we're really giving it some resistance and some load. Now, when it comes to backs, we are totally underloading them in the exercises that we are giving our clients. How do we know this? Because your most basic back exercises is killing them. They are working so intensely in those back exercises because they are not able to handle higher load when they're training their backs. So we want to increase the amount of load, obviously taking all the precautionary measures of any kind of injuries into account. But we need to make spines work, and they need resistance if we want to get them stronger. And on top of it, if you want to tone your back, you're going to have to give it a little bit of load. You can't do stuck in the air the whole time. Right. So it says there, when looking at the anatomy of the spine, remember that a muscle works and controls both eccentrically and works under high or low load concentrically. So a concentric movement for the back. If I start from a neutral position, so let's say I just start from here and I do an extension, the amount of work that it had to use to do that was not very high. If I take the spine from this position and I start restacking the spine up, taking it all the way back, it's going to require more energy, especially if I load it. Because I'm taking those fibers from their lengthened position, loading it and saying to it, I'm really going to test your maximum capability by loading you in your stretched position and then getting you to your shortest position. When you're doing any kind of restorative or rehabilitation work, it's a really good idea to start neutral to concentric, because the amount of effort required and the amount of brain work that's required from just a position there to there, or flatter to extension, or just here to lifting is less. We eventually want the clients to be able to do the full range with resistance so that they can get stronger throughout the range, because it's normally when they cannot produce those movements in range with strength that they end up hurting themselves. Right. So just a quick thing over here, and I'm going to do this really quickly because I actually know that you know this. What is muscle strength? And muscle strength is when a muscle is able to handle higher resistance. When you are asking a smaller group of muscles to kick in, you will not be able to handle a really high load. That is when the higher the load is, the bigger and the more global the groups of muscles are that start kicking in, because we need those bigger groups of muscles to handle a bigger object or push a bigger object. So muscle strength, if we say I'm going to strengthen your glutes, I am then assuming that you are thinking of, number one, waking up the glutes if you keep giving them a low load exercise, and you're eventually going to load the glutes to get it physically stronger. Same thing with the shoulder and same thing with the back. I'm going to wake up the muscles, get the alignment right, just so we can retrain the brain as to what this good form in movement would look like. And then from there, I'm going to add in weight and load to make it stronger. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We all know that. Right. I have put in this manual the muscles that act on the spine, and I'm hoping that it made sense and you went through it, and I don't have to go and sit and do a lot of anatomy with you, because I don't want to waste time on that, because that is something that you can do. And I think that you've been through so many of our anatomy things that it should make sense, but I am going to just summarize a couple of things because I think it's really important. Right. So the first one is the erector spinae, and one thing that we want to just single out there is the spinalis, because the spinalis is a little bit different to longissimus and iliocostalis. So the spinalis literally goes from vertebra to vertebra rather than one nice solid muscle running all the way up the back. And that will tell you that spinalis then acts on segmental extension and localized extension. And this is important because when we are trying to work the muscles that are deeper, say you're doing a low load exercise and this client cannot handle big load and everything on the inside is not working and we need to wake it up, because it is segment to segment to segment to segment, it would be a really good idea to do segmental motion. And you can do segmental motion and segmental extension if you're strengthening by having a weight in the hand and then doing that movement, thinking vertebra by vertebra, holding the weights here and then getting lower, middle, upper, lower, middle, upper, lower, middle, upper, And now we're retraining and strengthening that spinalis beautifully. Not to say that it won't work when you're doing the others, because they work together. But when you do that segmental movement, you are getting right into it beautifully, as well as the smaller ones, which is the rotatories, and you're also getting to sections of the multifidus, because that spans 2 to 4 vertebrae. So remember, the smaller the muscle group, the less load it can handle. So when you want to get to a specific muscle group, which is the smaller ones, don't increase the load, because the more the load is, the more it has to work. And the more it's going to say to its friends, this woman's crazy, I need more of you guys to help me. Let's say, for example, we're doing a normal hinge. So the client's over there, and you get them to do this small hinge to the front. Now, in this position, my back is working. And the reason is gravity wants to pull me forward, because I'm leaning the body forward. So my back extensors are maintaining me up. So as soon as your client just starts hinging forward, they start kicking in, especially the ones that are closer to the spine. As soon as they increase that hinge forward, you can actually feel it for yourself, how much more global that movement becomes, because now the body is going down almost parallel to the floor. So it requires, and the lever is longer against gravity, it requires more muscle fibers, bigger muscles to help and hold it in this position. So when we're looking at partially waking it up, and I'm going to teach you that specifically when we're doing different pathologies, we look at just waking it up a little bit, because I really want to get that stability waking up closer to the spine. And then when we start strengthening it, we increase that range, and then we start loading it in that range. Okay, so that's super important. So when we're having a look at the erector spinae, everybody knows where they are. Everybody knows what they are, but I want you to separate those two areas. And then I've always got notes there. These are our main global spinal extensors that control flexion of the spine in a standing position, as in a roll down. A normal standing roll down, you don't need to contract your abdominals to flex your spine there. You can let them hang, and you can just let gravity take you. The only reason why you're controlling that motion down is there is eccentric control from your back extensors, your hip extensors, your glutes, and your hamstrings. And that's why you're going down nice and slowly with a controlled movement. Right. What would the antagonists to the erector spinae be? And I really want you to immediately go, well, if it does extension, then it's got to be everything that does flexion. So we're looking at, and I want you to think of it in bigger terms than the norm. So if we're thinking that it does extension, so we're looking for everything that creates flexion, obviously we know abdominals are the antagonists. But what about a posterior pelvic tilt? All the muscles that create that posterior pelvic tilt will then also be antagonists to the extensors, which is abdominals already, which is psoas minor, but it's a minor, so, and glutes when we pull into that posterior pelvic tilt, and hamstrings in this position. However, if you lie flat on your stomach and you do back extension, all right, so she's going to lift her back up, and she then lifts her legs up, which forces glutes, and I say increase. I want that minus 20 degrees of hip extension. This is where the glutes encourage lumbar extension. So a lot of the times people are like, oh, we can't do that. That's not a good movement. It is a good movement as long as we know that our clients have resistance from the front and they can control that movement. They're not sinking there, pushing their stomach out into the bed. Exactly. So her glutes are either going to be antagonists to the back extensors when she pulls through like that, and I'm going to allow her to give it a good squeeze because it does that tuck for you as well. It does that hip extension. And your back extensors create, Yes, hip extension. Your back extensors create that motion, and your glute activation will pull the pelvis through for you, creating that flexion in the spine with hip extension. Now we know that, but hang on, hip extension, increased hip extension should give us lumbar extension, because we only have 20 degrees and then the spine has to change. And that is true if we're doing this type of movement and she's lifting up and going into that extension. But for a posterior tilter, or somebody who is standing and squeezing their glutes, they get that length in the lumbar spine. Posterior tilters don't necessarily always squeeze their glutes though. We know that when we look at them, a lot of them just have a flatter looking glute. It could be tight, it's not necessarily strong, or it could be flexible. And that you're only going to know once you actually test it. So antagonists to back extensors are abdominals, rectus abdominis, obliques. The TA does not move my pelvis like this. It just goes and it keeps everything together. Then the glutes will become an antagonist when it tucks the pelvis through like that. But it will become a synergist when you say lift your legs up and arch your back for me at the same time and increase that range for me to the best of your ability, because that lift in the legs, which the glutes is creating, is now also increasing the range of that lumbar spine with the hamstrings as well. I hope that made sense. All right. So moving swiftly along, quadratus lumborum. Two muscles I love in the body, serratus anterior and quadratus lumborum. I don't know why. I just love the quadratus lumborum. I'm like, this is such a cool muscle. It goes from that iliac crest, if you look at your picture, and it comes up and it attaches to that last rib. So there, Carly's showing it to you. So it's got that angle from that iliac crest going right up to that last rib running like that. So that means if it's on a rib, it has something to do with breathing. It has to have something to do with breathing. When it's on that iliac crest in the last rib, I want you to imagine how it would pull those two areas closer to each other. So I'm going to let Carly stand up, and it's going to pull the iliac crest closer to the last rib in that anterior pelvic tilt. And if you face forward, it's going to create that nice lateral tilt where she lifts it up and she pulls the hip closer to the rib cage. Because whenever the iliac crest is getting closer to the rib cage, we have that QL kicking in. Now, the only thing with a QL is it's the only back muscle that's only in the lower back, which means when your client constantly stands in an anterior pelvic tilt, that QL is always not happy. It's like, oh, you need to stop standing like this. I am constantly in spasm. Then your client stands in an anterior pelvic tilt with a lateral tilt with something like scoliosis or a leg length discrepancy. And they end up favoring that one QL. Stand forward. She's standing now and she's bending her one leg exactly like you were. Straighten this one, bend that one. Straighten this, there we go. So think of your clients who stand with one leg bent and one leg straight, and they sort of hang in their hip, and you can imagine what this QL is doing, and they're in an anterior pelvic tilt. It's not happy. Now, the QL is either not happy there, or your client stands in a constant posterior pelvic tilt, and that QL is now, if you look at your picture, stretching from the rib to the iliac crest, and it's the only one that's there in the lower back. So it says to the client, listen, now I'm spasming because I'm long, I'm constantly eccentric, this is not my strongest point, and I'm trying to stop your pelvis from dropping forward. So I'm holding on, and there's nobody else here in the lower back that's helping me. It's just me on my own. So you need to realign my pelvis so I can have spinalis, longissimus, and iliocostalis and rotatory start kicking in here in the lower back so that they can help me. And you know what, by the way, can you also teach the abdominals in the front there how they can control the pelvis better? Then me, the QL, won't be under so much strain. Okay, so that's when I just want to personify it because I think it makes so much more sense. All right. So quadratus lumborum stretching, love it. I do it all the time. The reason I do it is because I do have a lateral pelvic tilt, left hip higher than the right, slight leg length discrepancy. My left QL is always bigger than my right. Funny story. I went to the movies with my husband one night and I love massaging my QL. I love digging into it and I can just feel those pressure points and I'm like, yes, I just need somebody to constantly press into that. And I found the sweet spot on the armrests in the movie house and I was like rubbing my QL against this armrest. And my husband was like, can you just sit still? And I said to him, yes, I have found the perfect spot for my QL massage. So the QL is just one of those muscles because it takes so much strain. It just loves it if you give it a little bit of movement, love, and mobility. So I'm going to do this with Carly and I'm going to teach you some really cool stuff in the mobility, but I do want to show you this. And I think we might have done it on one of our posts this week. All right. So I'm not going to let you use the foam roller, but I want you to sit cross-legged on the bed for me. This I love. I've taught it to a lot of my clients online, and whenever I do, afterwards they sit up and they go, oh, that was so nice. And they don't always know what's going on inside the body. So she's going to take this arm and reach it out to the side. I want you to go up and over. Here's a gentle QL stretch. This arm is going to come up, and this shoulder obviously exposing the underarm. All I want you to do is take this arm a little bit further, anchor this hip, just close the ribs a little bit. And I want you to understand why. Because an arch in the back with open ribs means I am shortening the QL and I'm trying to release it. From that position, all I'm going to ask you to do is drop the elbow onto the bed. So now she's got that anchor point at her elbow. I'm going to ask her to press her elbow into the bed. And the more she presses her elbow into the bed, the more she can anchor this hip. And the more this QL goes, I'm loving this. Then from there, I just ask them to straighten up, no rotation yet. I ask them to straighten this arm up. So I just give it a little release. So your muscles need about 30 seconds with those receptors in the muscles so that it knows it's not in danger and the stretch is safe. So we want to hold it there a little bit to tell it that it's fine, and then we release it and then we take it back. And it knows, you know what, you can gently release. And I love these passive stretches and slowly bringing it up. And I'm looking at this alignment of hers the whole time. From there, she's going to keep that elbow down. She's now going to rotate her hand and put it, I'm going to let her pull onto the bed there in the front. They're going to be on the mat. And this is what I want. I want that tuck through because that is what the QL needs for that release. You cannot do the stretch with a bulging disc. Okay, so I would not do this with any bulging disc. I know that some people say you can and some people say you can't, and I am not risking it because you can think to yourself, say now she's got a disc bulging towards me and towards the right. So it's doing this, the disc, and I make her do this movement, it's now bulging even more. And a posterior bulge, always, the risk with that is it's always towards the nerves and the spinal cord. So I don't want to do this with them. But for somebody who's just got a tight back, this is brilliant. She's going to open it out to the side again. What I love about this is where the whole body comes in. We want flexibility of lats. We want flexibility of obliques. And we want flexibility of QL. So now we've got shoulders and torso coming together as one, and they both need to have that mobility to get this torso looser, and then slowly bringing it back up and straightening the arm. I'm going to do it over to the other side so that you can see it. So she's going to reach the arm over, always hand 30 degrees in front of her shoulder. We're doing that scapular line. We're not bringing it out here, and your clients have all these funny shoulders. So it's just slightly in front of her. This arm is up. Always expose that underarm, and if they can, give me a nice straight elbow. She's gently going to lower that elbow down, and everybody will have different range here. If your client cannot get to this range, keep a straight arm at the bottom there, or have a box that they can put their hand on, and gently going over, keeping that rib cage in. Nice. and slowly bringing it up. Let's do one more. And we're gently going to take it over. We hold that there. If you have a lateral bulging disc towards this side, I want you to immediately think now, well, if I was that disc, what would I be doing right now? I would be bulging more. So maybe I don't want to do that. She's gently going to rotate around, put her hand in the front. I'm going to let her hold onto the Cadillac because I want you to have a nice firm grip. And she's getting that beautiful stretch over there. And I'm going to encourage that tuck in the pelvis here just to increase it. And this must feel like it's draping with gravity. And then she's slowly going to open it out and just gently bringing it back up. Awesome, Carly, you can stay there for me. Wasn't it nice? I think I stretched my QL daily, especially my left one. Right, so that's just a gentle QL stretch. I want you to try that with your clients, and you're probably going to see like 85% of them do not have that mobility. We are stiff as sticks and we cannot move. And we're always trying to strengthen and get stronger and tone, and then we can't move even more. So we need to get them to release the tension, release the shoulders, get the body moving, get that fascia to wake up and really start healing so that we can then say, now I want to strengthen you because I've got everything nice and mobile. Right. Multifidus. So we know that this forms one of the core muscles. Spanning 2 to 4 vertebrae, we know that. We know that it also acts on rotation, especially towards the opposite side. But what's really important is this is the only core muscle that actually produces a movement, unless you're looking at psoas, which is a whole different story. But this is one of the core muscles that can produce movement, but it's so close to the spine, like spinalis, that it needs really little load to wake up. But we're always overdoing a core contraction. And the more you contract, the more you're saying more effort, obliques, TA, an exhale or a core contraction then brings in all your secondary breathing muscles. So latissimus dorsi, back extensors, serratus posterior inferior, serratus posterior superior, neck muscles. Everything starts kicking in when you ask your client for a 100% core contraction. When we're trying to wake something like multifidus up and getting the pelvic floor to kick in, if that's what you need to do with your client, we don't want that full-blown contraction. It's a little bit of effort. I always say 30% effort as you exhale. When we look at the core, and I didn't even cover the core in this course, there is a reason for that. I was like, I'm not putting the core in there. I don't know. I'll tell you this story because this is pretty interesting. So one of my really good friends got married and I was a bridesmaid. And then she brought the dress out and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to like hold my abs for my dear life in this dress, but I'll do it for you. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm actually going to go buy myself a Spanx. I'm not even going to do this to myself. So myself and the other bridesmaid, we went and bought the Spanx. What a bunch of idiots we were, because as we pulled the Spanx up, it came up here and her dress was this low back. So we were thinking to ourselves, okay, well, the Spanx isn't going to work. We're going to have to hold our abs the whole night. And it was so funny because every time we sat, we'd be like, we're just going to sit for a moment and then we just let it all hang. We were like, oh my word, this is so uncomfortable. When you hold a core contraction that intensely for an extended period of time, it actually hurts your back. There is so much pressure that you're creating around your spine that most of the times that is not what your client needs. Most backs that require relief and that require strength is purely an alignment issue and a strengthening of the global muscles rather than contracting your core. Because you can contract your core while you stand there. Now I'm contracting it. I can contract it while I'm standing there. I can contract it while I'm standing there. And none of those positions are going to help me if I'm trying to help my client create length in their spine and free movement in their spine. and strengthen their spine. So the amount of emphasis in this course on core is pretty little. I didn't bring it in. And there's a couple of reasons. The fact is that transverse abdominis brings everything in. It does give a little bit of stability to those lumbar vertebrae. It compresses them slightly, which is why when you give that huge contraction, like that 100%, for an extended period of time, it is not sustainable. Your client will say to you, my back feels sore, and you will not be able to pull it off. But you can pull off a 20% contraction, which becomes automatic, which then becomes natural tone all day. It's just getting those muscles to tone, like you would tone a bicep, like you would tone a tricep, like you would tone a deltoid. You get the transverse abdominis to tone. It's not about creating the blocks. I always say to the clients and even my family members, if they say, oh, I need to lose some weight, my stomach, then I say, you know what, you just need to contract your transverse. You'll look like you lost 2 kgs already or 4 pounds, because that's what it does. It brings everything together. And it's got that pelvic floor. So when the pelvic floor, when you're contracting your tummy, the pelvic floor is resisting that pressure from the transverse abdominis. And this really helps just for all of your coughing, your sneezing, and when you speak, that's super important. Obviously, if you have a bigger, or your client has a bigger abdomen, or pregnant woman, and it's out here, you definitely want to get that core contraction. There we go, she'll do it. You want to get that core contraction because this is hanging forward. So the back is carrying this weight here. Then the transverse is excellent to pull it in and just bring everything back to the center. And that's how it alleviates a little bit of pressure off the spine. It brings the gut back to where it must be so that it doesn't have to be straining because it's holding this extra adipose tissue or baby here in the front. All right. I said I wasn't going to be long on anatomy. Now look at this. This is crazy. Rotatories, what do? Well, they rotate the spine, and they are also really important for proprioception in your spine, where your spine now knows which vertebrae are where, something that you're not even aware of. And that's one of their functions, which is fantastic. Works really well. If you look at it, I call it the Christmas tree. It says there, spinal extension, especially local extension, just thoracic, just lumbar, all right? Spinal extension, rotation, and lateral flexion on a smaller scale. Due to their size, the rotatories or the rotators are less likely to work intensely in these movements. They are small. So remember I said, the smaller the muscle is, the less load it handles. So look at the size of that. You're not going to pick up a French with just those. You're going to need all of the global muscles to kick in, who have more muscle fibers, who are bigger, so that they can handle the load. But these guys are great when you're teaching your client controlled rotation. This is how we wake them up. We teach them controlled rotation, and now we're getting into the rotatory. Or, well, they're small. And I remember that we learned that small means a lower load. So when I'm hinging forward just a little bit and I get my client to rotate the spine, I'm more likely to get those to wake up rather than that movement where I'm hinging forward and I'm pulling more weight. Right. Okay. I've got at the bottom of all of those, what would the antagonist be? What would the antagonist be of quadratus lumborum? What would the antagonist be of the multifidus and the rotatories? And it's so simple. Just look at the movement they do, look at the muscles that produce the opposite movement, and that's it. Those are your antagonists. All right. Why do we want to know that? Why is it even important? Because what I really want to know is how tight are the antagonists? Because if they're really tight, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to work this guy to his most concentric form. So if you think of spinal rotation or lateral flexion Think of quadratus lumborum in lateral flexion, pulling the spine over that way. What would the antagonist be? The opposite. Quadratus lumborum, the opposite. Obliques are actually, so now it's this pulley system, all right? Here's the thing. If you're standing up and you're going to go into that lateral flexion for me, please. So she's in that lateral flexion. She's literally hanging with gravity. What is keeping her there? That side's QL. Well done. She got it. That side. That's why she's here. I would have been devastated if she wasn't this. So what's keeping her here? This side is holding her eccentrically. And if you're tight, it's the stiffness that's actually keeping you there. So in order for you to get that full lateral flexion, you actually need the opposite side's oblique and QL ready to take that release and to allow the body to move. Think about, and this is like really a big thing. When do your clients hurt themselves? When they rotate their spine and they do lateral flexion at the same time, or when they do lateral flexion, or when they flex forward and they pick something up. Why? Because we are not strengthening the muscles to handle eccentric load. The exercises we are doing, the load is too little. All right. Okay, then we've got semispinalis capitis and semispinalis thoracis. And these are also part of what is extending the neck and what is extending the back. So that semispinalis thoracis forms part of the spinalis, and it's just in the thoracic spine. It's as simple as that. It's not too confusing. Right, it says here, this is important. And I think this has been the one thing that has always made anatomy kick in for me is I am a visual learner. I want to see it. That's why all the videos we do have these muscles popping up. It was actually more for me than anybody else. I was like, if I was learning, what do I want to see right now? I don't want to keep going, where on earth is this muscle that she's referring to? I just wanted to go, oh yeah, there's the serratus. Okay, cool, that's what she's doing. It makes total sense. Okay, so actually I set it up going, what would I want? What did I need? Right, so it says there, attempt to visualize the layers of muscles surrounding the spine. Superficial layers include, and I've written it, I've got it there for you, the erectus spinae, except the spinalis, spine, close to the spine, and the splenius group, which are the ones like if you look at this, if you look at the splenius capitis and the whole splenius group, those ones are not your superficial layers. They've got other ones on top. Thank you. Oblique layers consist of scalenes, anterior, medius, and posterior. Important, scalenes running from the neck to the ribs. You know, you like this. So it's running from your neck to your ribs. And that tells you that whatever is happening here, and you're holding your breath up like this, think of your clients who hold their breath and they're not able to let it go. They're in this constant state of rib elevation and tension in their neck. You need to look at their scalenes because their scalenes are in constant state of contraction. Okay. Deeper layers involve longus capitis and longus colli, our deep neck flexors, all right? However, I'm going to discuss this with you in more detail. One of the clients that I'm seeing now overdoes neck retraction. So much so that, and he's the one that keeps stretching his neck because he's got something happening in his neck. And I'm going to tell you the whole scenario. And I said to him, I need you to stop doing neck retraction. Because every time I see you, you're retracting your neck and you've constantly, because of this, you've got a really long neck, you're retracting it and you're constantly stretching it. You've got this long neck, you've got so much mobility. When he does the side stretch and you're supposed to get to that 45, he goes just over that 45-degree angle with his neck. Then he kept getting these spasms in his neck and here right at his shoulder blade, and they couldn't pinpoint it and was pinching. So we did a lot of things, but I was very careful of what exercises I did with him because I didn't know, is there a stenosis? Is there a disc issue? And I'm not going to overmobilize his neck until I have more feedback. So I tried to get it to stabilize and to get everything stronger without over moving the neck. Told him, working in front of the computer, and changed this position and that position, and it did not improve like I wanted it to improve. So I said to him, I would love you to go for an MRI scan, because that's going to tell you, first, do you have medical aid? Because I know those scans are super expensive. And then if you have, go for the MRI scan, because he's super sporty. He does ice hockey, he does soccer, he does Ironman, so we're training shoulders. But now he's got this neck issue, and he did a lot of soccer playing. So you can imagine going for that ball with his head. And he was like, I was the one hitting it into the goals with my head all the time. And I kept telling him, this straight neck of yours, that's actually what's bothering me more than anything else. I'm going to roll a towel up. You're going to roll a towel up on the screen. You're going to put it under your neck, and I'm going to train you with a chin lifted, lifting your chin up. He went for the MRI scan. Came back, his cervical spine is straight. It has no natural curve whatsoever, and he has stenosis. So I was like, okay, fantastic. At least I know there isn't anything serious that's bulging. He's got a little bit of degeneration happening in discs and all the rest. So I'll quickly show you what I did with him. We might as well learn now, even though pathologies and stuff is next week. And it was the first time he was like, Tanya, why didn't you do this with me 4 months ago? And I said to him, because 4 months ago, I couldn't see inside there to see what was going on. And then you're going to blame me if I hurt you. And now you've got all of these other issues. But when I knew that, okay, so I'm not going to be pushing anything out anywhere where it shouldn't be. I know that extension with that stenosis is a bit tricky, but for him not, because his neck is so straight that taking him into a little bit of extension in his neck will take him to neutral. So I'm not going to take him beyond neutral. I'm just going to take him to normal. So that should be totally fine for him. And we did this. You're going to lie on your back for me. Why am I telling you this? Because we never, ever train our necks. We're like, oh, I feel my neck. Oh, I don't know if I should do this. I feel my neck. Or, oh, I'm not sure. I definitely feel something over here. We have to get our necks stronger because they're holding our neck, our cervical vertebra. So we have to actually strengthen it, and we have to load it. The only thing is, when we do this with our clients the first time, it is super uncomfortable because they are not used to doing this. And we've been trained in our brain that any neck activation is wrong, like any back activation is wrong. I had a little towel rolled up under his neck. Okay, so there's her towel, her ponytail. And then his spasm was always on the right and the pinching was on the right. So I wanted to get the right side anterior neck stronger because he's always stretching it like this. So I can do posterior neck easily, and we do a lot of that stuff, and I do a lot of shoulder work for him. But for me, when I looked at him, it was like he lacked strength here. So I had him lie flat. For most of your clients, I would probably raise them a little bit, but I know what he's capable of, and I know his natural strength. I had him rotate his head to the opposite side of the side where he's getting the irritation. And I had him give me a slight chin poke because I need him to do that, but not everybody needs that. He had to then just lift his head up off of the floor in that position. Don't overdo the chin poke though, just like that. And then lower it down. And bringing it up again, and he was like, geez, I can feel it working a lot in the front, and lower it down. Keep going for me, Carly. My question to him was, I don't really care about the front because I know it's going to be working. I want to know, are you getting that pinching in the back on the right? And he said, no, absolutely nothing. And he was like, Tanya, we need to do more of these. Where has this exercise been? So I had him doing that. And then the first set was away from the side that was irritated. The second set was towards the side that was irritated with a rotation, and he didn't feel it when he was lifting his head up. We did a couple of those. Eventually, we progressed him so that you must try this because you won't like it at all. I had him rotate his head that way and keep it there for me for 20 seconds just off of the mat. Super uncomfortable. When session number 4, when he's got no pinching in his neck at all and in the back, I'd have him lift his head up because I know there's no disc issues, and I'd have him stay up, rotate to the right, rotate to the left, rotate to the right, rotate to the left. How uncomfortable is that? And relax it down. So now that goes against so much information that's been ingrained into our minds of don't get the neck to work. Then I took all abdominal work with hands behind his head away. No hands behind your head. Because I'm like, clearly we need to get the stability and the strength in the front. What we were talking about, the deep neck flexors, longus capitis, longus colli. Yes, sternocleidomastoid, because the length of his neck was also counting against him. He's a really tall guy. So all ab work was done with hands away from the head, arms in front of him. I even had him doing it arms by his side so that I constantly had his neck working, and it was like beautiful. The pain disappeared. Isn't that awesome? So then I wanted us to look at serratus posterior inferior and serratus posterior superior. Absolutely love these because of a rotation of the spine. We never ever look at them. They've disappeared somewhere in all of our books, but they are super important for breathing, where we elevate with the serratus posterior superior and we depress the rib cage with serratus posterior inferior. So it's like these two go. So serratus posterior superior, inhalation, it lifts that rib cage, and serratus posterior inferior stretches. And as we exhale, it pulls serratus posterior superior down, and inferior starts working. Inferior also super important for spinal rotation. If you ever look at somebody's back who's really well toned and it looks like they've got these little alien fingers in their lower back, just like this, that is serratus posterior inferior. Latissimus dorsi, super important for back extension. Our lats are way too weak. Not many of us can do a pull-up. Not that we have to, but not many of us can. If you have a look at the tone of people's lats, it will give you a really good idea of how much stability and extension the lats are helping with, because the lats actually help us with back extension. And there's it's the most global muscle on your back. I always refer to that nice flesh that's hanging on top of the bra. Under it, it's all lats. We just need to tone them, and you're going to see that cut that happens there with that sports bra is going to disappear beautifully because we just needed a lat. All the pulls back that we do with the arms, people are always going, it's a chest expansion exercise. It's a tricep exercise. It's actually a lat exercise. The more, think about the size of it. Look at that picture that you have of the lats. Looking at that size, it needs power. So on the Pilates reformer, if you are familiar with it, we have 5 springs. When I do lat work, I put all 5 springs on. I'm like, you're big and I'm going to get you. So your normal lat pull that you do in the gym, where you're actually holding that, the 2 bars in front of you and you're pulling it back, I do that on the reformer, and I anchor my 2 feet like this on the shoulder rest, and I pull back. And as I do that, I do extension. Why? Because the lat helps me with the extension, and it's such a big muscle, it has to pull the bed, because these little deltoids, they're too small to pull 5 springs on a reformer. So remember that. Give your clients resistance if you want to get those lats stronger. We want to get the lats stronger to give more support to the back, and then they look great when they're toned and you're wearing a low-cut dress. Okay. Then we've got longissimus thoracis again. That is just breaking up the longissimus into the thoracic spine. Psoas major. Let's quickly go into psoas major. Why is this so important? Because it joins. I want you to think about this. It actually joins the spine to the leg. It's the only muscle that takes the spine to the leg. And it is on the bodies of the vertebra going all the way up. And we're talking about psoas major here. It is a hip flexor. It also works when you have that breathing, when you inhale and you release transverse abdominis. Psoas major goes, I'll become the pillar on the inside and creates a little bit of stability. And when you exhale, transverse kicks in and psoas major goes, okay, cool, I'll just take a chill pill now. So it gives that little bit of extra stability when you're inhaling and exhaling and creating that core work. It's also called the muscle of the soul. It holds so much tension. Think about the positions your clients sit in. When we are stressed, we pull it into our shoulders and we pull it all into our hips. So when we go for that psoas major, everybody always wants to stretch it. Not everybody needs flexibility. Remember, a muscle can spasm and give you feedback when it's long, and it can spasm and give you feedback when it's short. That muscle is going to shorten when she goes into that anterior tilt, and this part comes forward in that anterior tilt. So the abdominals come forward and she breaks at that hip joint because it is one of those hip flexors where it comes down, and you can look at the picture there, onto that lesser trochanter. But it also forms like a nice little cup for everything. Everything sits on it. The organs are hanging on it. If you have a look at the shape of it, it's almost like it creates a bowl for your internal organs to rest on. If you go and do more research on it, you'll see how the functioning of your internal organs affects the state of your psoas, and vice versa. Isn't that amazing? That's really amazing. I love stories like that. All right, psoas minor. Have a look at where the psoas minor attaches versus major. Major goes over to that lesser trochanter, and minor goes onto the top of that pubis. So that means if it's not over the hip, it cannot move the hip, but it's so small. And it does shorten in a slight posterior pelvic tilt. So it pulls that pubis up towards the rib cage, posterior, pulling it through there, but it's small. So if your state of a posterior pelvic tilt is constant and static and you love standing like that, psoas minor is definitely going to be affected. But when you're pulling something into a posterior tilt, it's really small. It's not going to be your main one. It's going to be abs and glutes and hamstrings and all the other bigger muscles pulling it through into that posterior pelvic tilt. Let's have a look at scalenes, longus colli, and longus capitis. Scalenes running from the neck onto the ribs, and the stretches that I did earlier were super important for it, and I want you to see it attaching to the rib. Longus capitis and longus colli, I'll get to it right now. So this is my quick biomechanical overview. So it's super quick. Right, so what I want us to look at is how to stretch the scalenes. Now, I want you to remember that we spoke about, and I want you to look at the picture of it being on that first rib. Think about your clients who hold their breath. Do you know how many clients struggle to go and push it all out? And we need to be able to push it all out so that serratus posterior inferior can say, woo, this is what I get to do. And serratus superior can then say, I'm actually getting the opportunity to release. Often, I can't remember where I read this, I actually need to find it. Clients who constantly get that pain up here, have you ever thought that it could be serratus posterior superior right over there? If we look at our client's breathing pattern, are they possibly holding air the whole time and they're not getting that complete release and dropping that rib cage? So when your client is stuck in their scalenes, or your patient is stuck in their scalenes, look at their ability to exhale it all out. And I always focus on this whenever I'm teaching somebody. So lie on your back for me quickly, Cardi. Think about your client to keep their ribs open. Now, I know that you get different body types, and you get the ribs that are naturally more flared and the breast bone that is bigger and more open. But most of our clients end up just leaving these ribs poking out the whole time, even after they've exhaled. So I will always say to them, I don't just say blow all your air out. Those of you who've done any of my group classes will know I go all of it, 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 all of it. So inhale there, Exhale, gently blowing all the air out, all of it, all of it, all of it. Compress, 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 compress. And then inhale, bring it all out. Now, naturally, throughout the day, you're not going to be blowing it all out and sucking it all back in, because that would be really weird. For the purpose of training them, you want to train the lungs, the intercostals, the rib cage, serratus posterior and inferior, to be able to have that movement in the torso, because it gets rid of tension and it allows for more mobility in the scalene. So now you can sit up and face them, please. So let's do a quick stretch. We did it this morning, but I do want to get that alignment right. Really important. Imagining those two sheets of glass. I had an instructor that always used to say, you're inside a Smartie box. So I don't know if you all get Smarties. It's like a little narrow, thin box like this with like chocolate coated sweets in it, and everybody knows what a Smartie box is, and you cannot get out of it. So you can imagine that. All right, so she's sitting up tall, shoulders are relaxed. Her neck alignment for me is important, but without creating that double chin. So let's go closer, Carly. Let's go over to the spine corrector, and then everybody can see. Right. So I want this neck alignment really good. I want to make sure that this looks relaxed. Look at your clients who always look like that. They're holding, they're keeping their air in, they're not allowing everything to exhale. Those clients that are holding everything in their neck, you'll also see that they hold everything in their jaw. They're not able to release their jaw. This is constantly holding on. So just that is an exercise, a movement that can get everything to release. When I do relaxation with people at the end of any class and I feel like they're highly strung naturally, I always tell them that I want their jaw to hang open. Think about your clients who grind their teeth at night and they go to the dentist and the dentist is like, yo, you grind your teeth. And you're like, what? I don't grind my teeth. It's because we're clenching here the whole time and we don't have the ability to let go. And we underestimate the amount that stress and everyday living and running on adrenaline creates within our neck and our spines and our breathing. So she's sitting up tall. I want a fairly good thoracic spine position. And in that, I mean a neutral position. For your clients who are tighter, you're going to release it first. I'm going to show you how. I want her head, her right ear, it's probably on your left, go right over to the right shoulder. I want about 45 degrees here. So I want them without this tipping and changing. I want you to get about 45 degrees. And that's going to tell me what that flexibility is. You're going to draw your chin in just a little bit more. That's it. Then 2 fingers. And she's still in that Smartie box. Here, this is important. Elbow 30 degrees scapular line. Exposed underarm. Relaxed shoulder. All right, super important, because if she elevates here, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to release here, and now you're giving me tension on this side. I'm trying to teach you to let everything go. All right, from there, she's going to turn her head to just look at this angle, not right under her arm. All right, just into the corner of that elbow, gently pulling it down. And I haven't changed the spinal position. She hasn't dropped her chin all the way forward, all right? And then remember I said she can raise the arm, but that's more for the levator scap and upper trap. Bringing it back to the front. In that Smartie box, she has to rotate her head up to the ceiling. And this is normally the most uncomfortable one for the client. Keep your chin in for me a little bit so that, yes, there we go. So that chin stays in and it just pulls. And then this, what's happening here is important. There's no tilting and she's still in that Smartie box. Beautiful. Relax. Okay. Quick review. Me on your walk. Abdominals. What movement do they produce concentrically? They flex the spine when I am supine, or they tuck the pelvis when I am supine or standing, because that would be against gravity. The tuck would be against gravity. Stand up. They do not create an activation that's worth anything when you stand and roll down. But they do create an activation, stand up, when you pull the pelvis through using the abdominals, because you're pulling the pubic bone against gravity. And that's where we want to understand the body positioning and how it affects or acts on the muscles. Right. The antagonists would then be all of the opposites. So if she's rounding over for flexion, we know the antagonists are the ones that are stretching and would produce the opposite movement. If she stands up and does, I want you to think of this one. If she stands up now and she pulls this pelvis through, what would the antagonist be? It would be everything that released in that movement, which is hip flexors are antagonists to the abdominals, because the abdominals produce that posterior tilt and the hip flexors produce an anterior tilt. Lower back extensors and the back extensors, absolutely, because they have to release to allow the abdominals to pull that pelvis through. Super important. Right. Moves the lumbar spine into flexion. And we can do the upper, and then we can do the lower, and we can do the whole thing together. Right, hip flexors. So hip flexors standing, because it's against gravity, she's going to lift her leg up, and it produces hip flexion, obviously. When she lies on her back, so you're going to lie on your back for me. So people often say, no man, your hip flexors are not working over here. Okay. So we never work our hip flexors enough, to be honest with you. They're tight, but they cannot function properly. When you have your client doing exercises like this for an extended period of time, two things are going to get tired. One is the hip flexors and one is the quads. Quads get tired because it's holding up a shin in an eccentric position. Hip flexor gets tired, especially when you start pulling the leg out there, because, and here gravity is kind of helping it, but it is short. You're going to bend your leg for me. Hip flexors are working here to keep the leg up. So the hip flexors produce that hip flexion. But the other movement that it produces that affects your spine is, you're going to stand up for me, please, an anterior pelvic tilt. Going into all of your hip flexors, and I want you to think of what they are: adductor, longus, magnus, brevis, your psoas major, your iliacus. All of those are in their shorter position when you're standing in that anterior tilt. When I'm in that anterior tilt and I'm shortening in my hip flexors, I want you to think, what had to release to get me there? And it was glutes, upper fibers of hamstrings, and abdominals had to let go. So now, if you know that, you know I need to teach my client to alleviate the pressure of there. If there's no flexibility issue, I'm going to teach them to pull this through. I'm going to teach them how to find their lower abdominals. And then 20 to 30% effort during the day in the lower abs, and we're sorted. So gluteus maximus, we know that it does hip extension, so it takes the leg behind us. And it also does the tuck, and we've discussed that. When it does that tuck, the antagonists become everything that releases your back extensors and your hip flexors, synergists. There's the abs if they've contracted them, which most people haven't anyway. When it does extension of the hip, so the leg goes behind them and they lift it up, it starts working with the back extensors, and then the antagonist becomes the abdominals. So now it's switching around. And that's why biomechanics is so interesting, because it's not a black and white scenario. It's a movement scenario. What position am I in? What movement am I creating? And that's how am I changing these joints? And that then gives you a whole new perspective. Hamstrings. Obviously, we're trying to think on how the hamstrings affect the spine, because that's what we're dealing with. The hamstrings are obviously attached to the pelvis, which means they change a pelvic position. They will help the glutes. They will work with the glutes to do that hip extension and eventually go into lumbar extension, because we only have that 20 degrees of extension behind us. And it will also shorten, but not strengthen, and maybe not even tighten in a posterior pelvic tilt. Then it's the same as the glutes, where the back extensors start releasing when we're in that constant state of shortening of the hammies. So we've got this part that says what affects spinal mobility. So next week, we are going to be doing pathologies. I saw some questions here with regards to spinal fusions. I promise you, I'm going to cover everything with you guys on Friday. QL stretch with a spinal fusion. It really depends on where the fusion is. And they are able to do mobility in their spine, but I'm going to get into it in more detail next week. It's just how much mobility you're doing and whether it even is making a difference. So that's the big thing, because when your spine is fused, it's fused. It's not really moving. And that's when you've got all that manual release and massage that comes into play, and that becomes important. But I want us to look at what affects spinal mobility. And I've written something there about the spinal cord. And the reason I've written it there is you hear so much conflicting information when it comes to training the spine and getting the spine moving and working with people with spinal injuries. I have always maintained that I never want to hurt somebody's back unless there is so much evidence and it's overwhelming that I will not hurt their back. But it needs to make logical sense to me, always. If there is a disc bulging backwards, which you're going to learn all about next week, and it's pushing towards the spinal cord, it doesn't make logical sense to me to do a movement that would press it more into the spinal cord. Why? Because the spinal cord forms the center of everything. And I really want this client to age well. And that's my biggest goal with exercise. Think of people who train their butts off and they're broken. Just because you exercise never means that your body is in good shape. It might look great, but inside, we don't know what's happening. And I've worked with so many sports people who are so worse off in their bodies than the people that I know who have not really been that active throughout their life, because their joints are caving in, their necks are caving in, they're getting spinal fusions, they're getting hip replacements and shoulder replacements. The climber that we're working with now, you would think he's super fit and he's strong, but he's done his shoulder in because he's doing stuff that probably isn't really functional, all right? So when it comes to the back, my first question that I always ask myself is, am I 100% confident that I'm not putting this client at risk right now? And if I am 2% not sure, then I don't do it, because you only have one spine. And sometimes I feel like there's so many studies out there, but have any of these people ever had these injuries? Are they good movers themselves? Can they feel what it feels like? And that's always, you guys will see that in every course. What does it feel like when you do this? What does it feel like when you've done your back in and you do this movement? And I think in one of the webinars, I can't remember which one it was, I told you guys about what I had done to my back driving for 2.5 hours in a car between two kids' car chairs. The car was loaded at the back. It was actually what we call a bucky. I'm not sure what you call it anywhere else. A truck. It was a truck. And it was loaded at the back. So I was sitting with the two kids here with their car chairs in spinal flexion for 2.5 hours. And I felt fine while I was sitting in spinal flexion until I had to get out of the car. And I have a mobile spine. So I've got a really mobile spine in flexion. And I could not move. And that was the first time, and I'd been working with clients with their backs and I'd been dancing my whole life. That was the first time I was like, oh my goodness, right now I'm in their shoes. And then I use myself as a guinea pig. I always do that. And I realized, don't ever say to me in that position that you need to stand up. Do not ask me to flex my spine and to pick something up, because it is so sore. I cannot do this. Any flexion that I created with my back for the next 2 to 3 months was uncomfortable. The first 2 weeks was painful. And then I knew what I was supposed to do. For me, lying prone, for me doing back extension, and then the epitome for me and the epiphany for me as an instructor was the fact that the low load exercises were not cutting it for me. So I loaded my back with a bar and 40 pounds. And I was like, that's it. I'm over this back being like this now. I need to get this thing stronger, and I'm tired of flexing over and feeling this uncomfortable feeling. And I'd been doing all the light training, but the light training never kicked in my global muscles and got them back to where they were, because I was taking it so light that I just couldn't get that strength back to cope with the things that I wanted to do in my everyday life. And so I increased my load after feeling more comfortable in flexion, but I never did flexion with the increased load with what was happening in my back. I maintained neutral, and I would do a little bit of extension, and it fixed everything for me. So when we talk about just get the spine moving with an injury, I always go, now my ears are deaf. You know, when you say that to me, I'm like, no. How many spinal injuries have you had to say that to somebody? Because people with, like, I've had clients with spondylolisthesis. You are not going to just get their spine to move. You are not just going to do extension, because they're going to say to you, I do not like that movement. I don't want that movement. So why am I going to put the risk on my shoulders to then say, no, you'll be fine in extension, go for it? I will never do that. I know that they will be safer in neutral, because I'm not pushing anything in any direction. They will be safer in neutral. And that's really what I'm going to focus on with you guys for next week. Is I am not that instructor that will just move your spine when you have an injury, because it must make logical sense to me. If it's bulging to the back and I make you flex, I'm going to bulge it to the back even more. If it's bulging to the front and I make you extend, I'm going to bulge it to the front even more, especially if you are a client who is having symptoms. Some people have bulging issues and they have no symptoms, and they won't know. But I'm telling you, they will know the day that they go and do that one movement that's loaded with the spine and extension with that bulge, then it's going to come out. Okay, so yeah, that's just my take on it. Until somebody can come to me and open the body and say, I saw a study that they've done on pig spines. And this is where this whole thing started. Well, one of the statements came out saying you can just move. They moved these pig spines and nothing happened. And I was like, did every single one of these pigs have an extruded disc? Because if it didn't, then I don't want to see the study. Like, don't tell me you extended healthy pig spines. Extend the broken spines and then come to me with a study and say, no, it was absolutely fine. Nothing extruded, nothing poked anywhere or pushed anywhere into any nerve at all. Go ahead and do it. So until then, I'm not doing it. Okay, just because my clients is my priority. I've got their spinal cord. Why is that so important to me? Because it is the central point of everything. When I'm training somebody's back, I always take that into consideration. When my client comes and says, I have stenosis that's developing, I know that that's actually quite serious. I'm not going to say to them, oh, this is not good news at your age. But that's where we start narrowing that spinal canal. So what they do from there on out, don't go and do a sport where you're going to hit a ball with your head, because you're just going to aggravate it. And what happens? That calcification keeps happening because your bodies keep trying to regenerate itself, and it just increases the pace of how this degeneration and breaking down is going to happen. So we're trying to get people to train better, to get stronger, and to eliminate exercises, movements, and negative movements that are going to make things worse. And that's my job to know that. So it says posterior and anterior longitudinal ligaments. This is important. I really want you to take every single client that you have right now and imagine them standing in front of you. And then I want you to see them roll down through their spine. You can do it for me, Carly. Thank you so much. I keep forgetting that you can help me. I want you to see them rolling down through their spine. You know your clients so well. Stop just there. Then I want you to think for yourself, how would Lisa's upper back look here? How would Stefan's lower back look in this position if they were just passively hanging down? And that's the first question. The next question is, when they're hanging here, is Lisa feeling a stretch here? And is Stefan feeling a stretch there? Or don't they have any feedback whatsoever? because that to me is super important. All right, so you're slowly going to roll up there. Then when I see when they roll down, and I don't know if you can do this for me, but you're going to roll down and I want you to keep your lower back flat. It's flexing. There we go. Stop there. So they're in that position, and there's not that 50 degrees of flexion that we're supposed to get there. So we're not getting that flexion in the spine like we want to. If they're not feeling any stretching or any releasing happening in the spine, is the problem really muscular, or is this a structural issue? Not meaning that it's an issue. Are they structurally tighter and restricted in the actual spine, in the ligaments of the spine? Are they restricted structurally because of how they are put together? Or is this a muscular thing? How do I know that it's probably muscular? You're going to lie on your back for me, put your feet up against the bars. Closer, sorry, feet up. There we go. Arms relaxed by your sides. I want a pelvic curl where you push your feet into the bar, super tuck that pelvis as you roll up. Stop there. A little bit lower. At that point, if you're pushing your feet into the bar and you're super tucking your pelvis, your client who has tight muscles is going to say to you, oh, this feels good. I'm getting such a nice stretch here. When they do this movement and it still looks flat, they can't get that tuck and they're like, I don't really think I can feel much happening there. Then you want to check, well, do you just not know how to tuck? Can I show you how to tuck your pelvis? If they still can't and it's still flat, then I'm not going to say it is like that, but I'm going to put a little flag in my mind saying this could be a structurally stiffer spine. That's going to have the same look when somebody's had a spinal fusion or ankylosing spondylitis where it starts fusing on its own. They're not going to have that mobility. Here's the thing. The clients of yours who are structurally stiffer in the lower back often don't have a lot of injuries because the spine doesn't move and the discs don't move and they don't play around. When the instructor comes and says, do you know that your spine must have so much flexion in the lower back and you don't have it? But don't worry, I've got your back, excuse the pun, and I'm going to get you that flexibility. So we're going to round your back and I'm going to roll your legs over your head. So do a roll over for me. I'm going to do all of these types of movements because I want to create that flexibility because the book says that's how much you must have. That is when you take that structurally stiff spine and you hurt it because it wasn't made to do that. And it's okay. Not everybody has to roll. Not everybody has to roll up into a teaser. If you can get out of bed by rolling onto your side and coming up with using your hip flexors, you are made in such a way that there's always a way out. But as soon as you start playing with structure, that is when you start creating issues for a spine. Don't overmobilize a spine that was not made to do that. When it's muscular stiffness, that's a completely different thing. We also don't want to have these hypermobile spines because when the spines are that mobile, that is when our discs go, oh, this is new and I'm moving this way and then I'm moving that way and I'm going forward and I'm coming backwards. And when you've got that flexibility in your spine, like I have, and you sit in that deep flexion for a long time and you then have to stand up, your disc is like, you've been pushing me back for so long and everything's released. Your back is stretched, nothing is holding, there's no support here. It's going to take some time. You're not just going to stand up because your muscles are constantly in a lengthened state for an extended period of time. Your back muscles are very much like this. And this is something that I taught 15 years ago. I was like, people, when they activate glutes, they don't feel glutes, they get hamstrings. Why? Let's quickly go and figure it out. But when they don't contract the back, because it's always long, and I then give them back exercises, they spasm. Why is that not the same as the glutes? Why do the glutes just go, I'm not doing it? And the back says, I'm doing it, but I'm spasming. Well, the glutes have a whole group of muscles that can cheat for it. It's got a whole bunch of other glutes, and it's got hamstrings. So it says, I'm sleeping, you sit on me all day, I'm stretched all day. What makes you think that I can shorten concentrically now? Especially now you give me resistance. I'm just going to call a friend, and that's called semimembranosus, tendinosus, and biceps femoris, and they will do this with me or for me because I cannot do this. Your back extensors say the complete opposite. They say, well, we don't really have any cheats. Maybe QL in the lower back. So when you extend your back, it's really just us that has to extend it. So we're long the whole time, and then all of a sudden you come and you want to shorten us and give us resistance. So we give you the feedback of not going to happen. It's spasming. It's like taking a cyclist who loves sitting like this and then saying to him, go into full back extension in training. They really struggle with that because the muscles are so used to that eccentric position. Taking them from eccentric to neutral has more benefit than taking them from neutral to extension, because holding neutral for them is challenging. So you take them from challenging to super challenging instead of what I'm comfortable with to let's wean myself into back extension. That has so much, you get far better results if you can do it specifically for them from eccentric to neutral. And this is where we try and understand different body types. So when we're looking at the ligaments of the spine, and I've just taken these two because, I mean, obviously there's loads more. The posterior longitudinal ligament, I want you to have a look at where it is, and it is picture number B, the second picture. It is the ligament of the posterior body of the vertebra. The anterior longitudinal ligament is the ligament of the anterior body of the vertebra. So if you took everything away, my skin, my internal organs, and you looked at my spine from the front and everything was gone and clean, you'd be looking at my anterior longitudinal ligament. So those allow us, like ligaments, think of people who have ligament laxity. Why is it any different for the spine? Some people have really tight ligaments and restricts their movement. Why is it any different for the spine? The only difference here is we need to know when enough is enough. What is this client going to be capable of? We need to know when enough is going to be enough. When is this client, when am I going to push this client's spine too far? Because it's not a muscular issue. There's a possibility this is a structural issue. It helps me so much. And let me tell you this story. So I've got two ladies that I train, mother and daughter, separately, exactly the same lumbar spines. It is as straight as an arrow. So I've said to them, to the younger one, who's not that young, I mean, she's got 3 kids, we're never going to roll up. And it doesn't matter, because obviously we don't need to roll up. Your body wasn't made to roll up, and I don't see you lying in bed and doing a beautiful roll up to go and fetch your 3 kids. So we're going to figure out a different way to do that. And you've obviously been fine up until now, so it doesn't matter. So there's a lot of Pilates exercises, for example, that you're not going to do, and I don't need you to do them because they're not functional. Nobody drops in the supermarket and does a teaser ever, or a rollover. It's just fun. Her mother also trains with me and trains with somebody else. And getting to the meeting, and I'm like, hi, are you ready? This is what I want to focus on. And she said, yes. I was chatting to my other trainer, and we're really working hard on getting that flexibility in my lower back. She wants me to be able to round the spine more and to just, so I can roll up. I want to be able to do all of these types of exercises. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be the one who breaks this news to her. And I'm going to do this very gently so she doesn't think that there's something wrong with her. So I said, that is so interesting that you say that, because I was having this conversation with your daughter. And you both have exactly the same backs. And that is why I feel so confident in giving you this information. Up until now, 67, you've never ever had to roll up, ever. You've never had to roll over. You've never had to do any of those movements. And your spine is not made to do that. In fact, your spine in the lower back is probably better than my spine because mine moves so much. And you've never complained to me that you've had any lower back things ever. So over mobilizing your spine could possibly hurt your spine. So you're never going to get that full round that you're hoping to get, and you don't have to, because nobody walking around you in the shops knows that you can't round your lower back, because it doesn't matter. So what I'm trying to illustrate to you is there are so many people out there, trainers, who still feel that the spine has to move the same across the board for everybody. If you take that client and I'm talking stuff, it's a flat lower back, but they can do flexion of the thoracic spine. And that's why I'm saying ab work. How are you going to do ab work with them? You can do a little bit of a chest lift and they feel it a lot, but I'm always propping them up, or I'm working abs from the bottom, from moving the legs around. But to say to them that we're going to get you to do the rollovers and stuff, just think about it. You've set them up for failure, because it's never going to happen. When they do a roll up, they cannot push that part of their back, that lumbar part of the spine, into the mat. It doesn't go. And they're like, I keep missing the spot. And then I say, but I told you, you're never going to get that spot down. So we're not going to do the roll ups. You're never going to get the spot down. We're going to do half roll backs. And I'm going to stop you when I see you want to start tipping, because that's the only thing that your spine will do, is it'll do a hinge tip going back. So that's why this section is in here, to understand that not everybody's spines move the same, and it's not always muscular. It's just the way you are. It's the way you built. And when you start moving them, you start hurting them. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to move over to the spinal mobility. I'm going to see it here, and I'm just going to start teaching it, and I'm going to add in extra stuff. I know that for a fact. What I did here was, I didn't want to give you hundreds of exercises. I wanted to give you the ones that I know work really well. And then, as I said, when I started playing, I was like, oh, Lord, I want to add this in, and I want to add that in. So I will probably end up doing that anyway. Yes, I'm not going to use it immediately. Right, so what you're going to do is, you're welcome to try this with us if you want to. I don't mind, or you can just watch and learn. So a small towel is what I like to get. So we call this a hand towel. All right, and you fold it in half, and then you do a nice little roll with it. My absolute favorite thing when we're mobilizing thoracic spine, because the foam roller on those tissues is just too hard. Okay, so this is nice and pliable and soft. You can lie down.
Tanya, sorry, can you move the foam roller away, please?
Okay. Right. So the first thing I love doing, to just say to the thoracic spine, you need to let go. You're always like this, and we get stuck in this position, is I have them do a gentle pelvic tuck and then into a pelvic curl. But instead of rolling this, I want you to think of your kyphotic client. You're going to go down for me, lift your head up. And I just want the neck not to take so much strain because it's resting back. She doesn't have straight arms. She's got relaxed arms like this above her head. And I want to tell you why they are there. Those arms are there because it anchors her upper torso. If I can anchor her upper torso while the bottom part is rolling down, I'm not going to have that common movement where they lift the chest this way as they roll down through the spine. So she goes up and then they lift that whole thing with them. And I always imagine it as a string of pearls. As that pearl touches the bed, it just goes and it relaxes. And then the next one goes. Now I know the vertebrae don't move vertebra by vertebra, but it's such a good way to explain it to your client for them to be able to visualize it. But we know that that is not possible, but it can roll. It's got that mobility in it. Right. So the arms are there to anchor that chest down. I do it with the legs turned out. Reason being, I don't want to worry about tight hip flexors. I don't want to worry about tight rec fems, because that's just going to make all of this start cheating. So I take those hip flexors out of the line of stretch and I open the knees out. Right. She's going to inhale. Just a small tuck to start, just a gentle tuck. And I want her to think of holding that there and giving me the biggest super tuck that she can, just there. And at this point, this side is anchored down, and then inhale, release it. And then exhale, gently tucking it through just to that point, and then gently controlling it down. Nice. And exhale, tucking it through, super tuck, hold, elbows and arms are relaxed, and gently release it. If your client cannot get their arms there, roll up 2 towels and rest it on their arms, because a towel can be molded in that shape, okay? Now we're gonna go all the way up. Inhale. I want you to visualize why this will allow the thoracic spine to release. Exhale, tucking that pelvis through, peeling the spine up, allowing the chin to naturally drop in. Right. Now you want to say to them, inhale. Exhale, curve down, but pull your coccyx away from your shoulders. Put it as far away from your shoulders as you can when you put it down. So we create that traction and that space in the spine, and the pearls just go down one by one, and the upper back releases. We're going to do it again. Inhale. And exhale, the abdominals pull through, glutes can kick in to get that nice tuck, rolling up, and the chin naturally drops in. Inhale there. And exhale, curving down, keeping that super tuck, putting it far away from you and releasing it. If you see that they're good at that, now we straighten the arms above the head, and I'll tell you why. Inhale. Exhale, gently tucking the pelvis through, rolling all the way up. I love this traction for the spine that we're going to do now. Inhale. Exhale, pull that coccyx away from the hands, and the hands away from the coccyx, exposing the underarm and getting that length in the spine, because that's what we need in neutral. Nice. Inhale. And exhale, gently tucking the pelvis through, allowing the chin to naturally drop in. Inhale. And exhale, gently peeling it down, coccyx away, super tuck, arms reach away from you, and neutral. Beautiful. Lift your head up for me, please. Right, now we take the towel. Wrong way. And we're going to give it a quick roll, and it's not big. Don't take a big towel, because that's not going to work. And we're going to place this in the perfect spot on our upper back. So let's find it. Yes, I got it. That was quick. Let's try. Okay, right. So I'm actually going to take it just there. Okay, so I'm kind of just above the shoulder blades, but everybody's going to be different, all right, from where they're stuck in their back. We're going to start this with a slow movement, exactly the same as what we just did. So we're going to inhale. So I do the second after the first one, heels together, knees apart. Exhale, just the start of the tuck. Now, as she's tucking there, the thoracic spine naturally wants to start rounding because she's rounding. But the towel is giving it a little bit of pressure to just stay open and just keep that slight extension, which starts pushing those vertebrae and going, you need to extend a bit more, and then controlling it to neutral. And exhale, tucking it through, hold, and taking it to neutral. Let's take it all the way up. And we exhale, super tuck the pelvis, peeling it all the way up into that diagonal line. Nice. I want these heavy arms, bent elbows. That's it. Exposing those underarms. Inhale. Exhale, coccyx far away from you as you gently control it down. What an amazing exercise for your clients to do at home. Inhale. Exhale, gently tucking it through, pressing the back down, peeling it up, hold. Obviously, we've got all the rules, pulling the pelvis through, maintaining abdominals, not sinking in your back. All the rules apply. Yes, none of that. Inhale. Exhale, a long movement as you slowly control it all the way down. Same thing with straight arms for me, please. Inhale. Exhale, gently tucking through, rolling it all the way up. And now, that was a nice bulge in your abs, bringing it all the way up. Hold it. So now this is not in your book, of course. You're going to keep that hinge. I want you to hinge your pelvis down there. Now watch your hand lifted. I don't want that. So that tells me immediately that upper body wants to start coming with her. So we're going to hinge it up, pressing 1 and control down, heavy over there. And up 2, control it down, keeping it heavy. And up 3, control it down and heavy. Nice. And up 4 and gently lowering it down. Excellent. Cross the one leg over the other one. Relax your arms out to the sides. Love this because I'm going to ask you to, can you see that big space that she has there? I'm going to ask her to lift her bum up, move it away from her. Stunning. And then I just create more length in her back. Okay, so I'm not scrunching it because we do that every day anyway. All right, so I love getting that thoracic spine to just have a little bit more of a neutral extension press as we do rotation, so that we don't do rotation like this, but we teach our spine to do rotation like that in neutral or extension. So she's going to keep this position with her upper torso. Inhale, gently reaching the legs over that way without arching the back. And then exhale, bring it back into the center. Can you lift this up? Because I know you shifted for yourself now. Inhale, taking it over. And exhale, bringing it back. So one thing that I want you to notice on Carly is if you look at her, you might want to go, oh man, she keeps arching her back. That space is big. I want you to also look at the fact that she is slim. So your client, because this is important, the size of my client is important because that's going to give me an idea of why I'm seeing what I'm seeing. So you'll want to keep saying to her, no, man, that space is too big. But actually, she just doesn't have a lot of extra adipose tissue in her back because I'm looking at her pelvis and it looks absolutely fine. So she's going to inhale over. Some people just have some terrible problems. Exhale, gently pulling it back. It's such a big problem when you have no extra adipose tissue. Inhale, gently reaching it over. And I want the shoulder to anchor down. And exhale, pulling it back. Switch the legs over for me. And we're going to inhale, reach it over to me. From this angle, you'll be able to see if she increases that arch in her back. And exhale, bringing it back into the center. So anchoring that side is getting that rotation. So we've got 30 degrees of rotation in the spine, happening mainly from the lower thoracic spine. Inhale, bringing it over. And pull this leg to me. And then exhale, drawing it back. Nice. One more. Inhale into the rotation. I'm going to keep her here. I didn't do it on the other side. Exhale here for me. And now the rib cage closes and the spine's trying to rotate. And now we give it a little bit of a push. And then inhale there. And exhale, blowing it all out, bringing the leg all the way back in. I'm going to do a different one as well, but not immediately. I want you to sit up for me, please. Cross your leg over. Hands are behind you. That's it. Right. Open chest. So I want you to open the chest out. Take the arms a little bit further back if you can. Right. Now I want you to open the shoulder out as she rotates. So she's going to inhale, rotate over that side. There she's getting that rotation without overarching in the back. And then exhale, bringing it back. Inhale, reaching it over. And why I love doing this is it gets an additional pull in this part here, which is fantastic for that fascia, and bringing it back. And inhale, gently reaching it over. Hold it there. Exhale, blow all the air out. Ribs close, ribs close. Inhale. Exhale, pulling it all the way back. Switch it over. And inhale, bringing it over to me. And exhale, controlling it back, and it's nice and relaxed. And inhale, reaching that knee over, opening that shoulder. And exhale, bringing it back. Last one, you're going to inhale, bring it over to me. Hold it here. Exhale, blowing all the air out. Ribs close, ribs close. Inhale. And exhale, pulling it back, feet next to each other, please. This one I absolutely love. We're going to allow everything to let go. So much so, you're actually going to push your feet into the ground. Open your feet a little bit. You're going to push your feet into the ground so you can super tuck your pelvis. So you're going to exhale, shorten completely into everything. Super tuck, straight arms. Allow the shoulder blades to pull apart as much as you can. And then inhale, literally roll the shoulders back, extend the chest and the spine, and open it up to the ceiling as much as you can. Yes. Exhale, pulling it in, getting that super tuck, pulling it through, allowing the shoulder blades to pull apart, stretching those rhomboids and middle tracts. And then gently inhale as you open it out, and think of getting coccyx closer to the shoulder blades. And exhale, pulling it all the way in, rounding through, super tuck, super tuck. And then inhale, gently opening it out as much as you can, holding it there for me for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and bring it to neutral. Right, I love this one. Where your hand is now, I want you to place that elbow down, release the right hand, and go up and over. Yes. What am I looking for? I want that line there. So this hip is anchoring down. She's got an exposed underarm. This hip is pulling back, and I'm getting that rotation with extension, the worst possible thing you can do for an anterior bulge, by the way. And then inhale, bringing it all the way back up, over to the other side. We go up and over with an inhale for me, keeping that hip down and bringing that close to the ear. That's it. And then exhale, bringing it up. And then inhale, up and over. It's such a nice feeling. She's pressing this elbow away from her. So she's not collapsing into it. She's pressing it up, because that's going to help her arch her back a little bit more. And then bringing it back up. And last one, up and over as you inhale. Inhale, reach, 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 pressing that elbow through the bed. And then gently bringing it back up. Now you're going to grab your book called Inspired Thought, because you're going to add this one to the repertoire. Lie on your side facing them, please. 2 bent legs, 90 degrees. You might have seen this before, but we're going to do this properly. All right. I'll ask you to go just with your knees on the edge. I know we've got a lack of space here. 2 arms straight out in front of you. Up, lift your head. Boom. Nice. I'm going to move it slightly to the back, Carly. So lift your head there. So when you roll back, you've still got towel. Isn't that nice? Little towel. All right. So we've only got 30 degrees of rotation in the spine. If you want your client to go past 30 degrees, those 2 knees have to glide past each other, all right? If you just want 30, they cannot glide past each other. So that's your decision to make. We want them to create free movement as well. Maybe doing a few where they just go to 30, if they can even get to 30, and then a few where it's just free movement is also amazing, because we don't want everything to be controlled. We do want the body to let go. From there, inhale, rotating around for me, please. That's an inhale. All the way, hold here. I want you to pull that arm further away from her. She's going to feel like she can make an adjustment. That's it. Good. This knee is anchored, and she just has to pull this top knee towards you a little bit to get that hold in that rotation. And then exhale, bringing it all the way back. And inhale, opening it out, keeping that top knee pulling forward. And then exhale, pulling it back. This is my favorite. And inhale, opening it out. They stay opened out. Exhale, blow all the air out. All of it. Ribs close, ribs close, ribs close, ribs close, because the ribs are attached to that thoracic spine as well. And the thoracic spine is rotating and it's going, whoa, this is interesting. And then inhale, bringing it all the way back. And exhale, inhale, opening it out. Sorry, that was my mistake. And then exhale, stay there for me, stay there for me. Exhale, blowing it all out, all out, all out, all out, all out. And then gently bringing your arm back. Excellent. Good. I want you sitting up for me, please. All right. So I showed you the one earlier where I had her put her elbow down and then just going, let's do it quickly, Carly. So we go up and over and just the elbow goes down and then back up. And then the elbow goes down and back up. And then last one, do one more for me. Elbow goes down, rotating, the hand goes forward, keeping that. And then opening it out, and then elbow comes up. All right, so that's really nice if they don't have this. Then I love this. So I've got her hand always 30 degrees in front of her, not directly next to her, because then we get all these funny shoulders. So 30 degrees in front of her. I'm going to have it round about there on the tips of her fingers. She's going to gently reach that foam roller away as she rolls it away and hold. The shoulder is open and she's exposing this underarm. She's going to exhale, rotate around. Here we go into that QL. And now she's got the foam roller to rest on. And this is where I want those shoulder blades to drape with gravity. There's no effort for them to relax here because gravity will just peel them over the rib cage and allow them to drape. She's got this tuck here in the pelvis. Any posterior lateral bulging disc will not like this movement. And you're slowly going to open it out to the side and then pulling it back up. We go again, up and over, 30-degree scapular line, exposed underarm, rotating it around, draping the shoulders with gravity, and then gently opening it out and bringing it back up. She's going to stay there. I'm not going to do the second side. She can do it later. This I love. I've got her on the Cadillac on the edge. And why I want this is I want that traction and that hanging down. You're going to learn that when we have disc issues, we do not want to create that traction for your clients in our sessions, especially a posterior bulge. You're looking for trouble. But when you just want a client to release their spine and they've got stiff muscles, I absolutely love this. So she's going to inhale. Exhale, chin in, slowly curving down through the spine. Her arms are going to drape past that Cadillac all the way down. She's hanging, everything is pulling. She's even getting a stretch into those hip rotators. Inhale. Exhale, gently curving it all the way up, restacking the spine. Hands go to the knees, and she's going to open her chest out, and she's literally leaning back and opening the chest out. Chin in as she slowly comes forward and rounds down through the spine, allowing it to completely hang. Inhale. Exhale, slowly curving it back up. Every single vertebra, holding onto the knees, and then opening that chest out to the best of your ability. Beautiful. I love it. Right. Then hip and spinal extension. The next one, I'm going to do that last. I should have actually put that right at the end of the manual. I'll move it. I do want to do this one first. So she's going to go on her hands and knees for me, please. Right. So what I wanted to do here is her hands are going to be a little bit more forward than normal, just so that I know that I'm getting a better chance of finding serratus anterior. She's going to give me a little bit of extension in her spine. The right hand is going to drop down and under the left hand, all the way down. That's it. Don't lean back. You stay forward. Take your hand forward. There we go. And you're then going to extend this arm above your head. There we go. So we're trying to get that shoulder all the way through. We've got that extension and rotation happening there in the spine. And I'm trying to keep these hips square. You'll see she's going to want to lean that way towards you when the shoulder is down. But if she brings this over, it's just going to increase that for her a little bit more. Bend this hand in, bringing it back next to your ear. Press yourself back up over to the other side. And we lower it under. Then reach that right arm above the head, keeping the hips towards you this time because she wants to lean over towards me. And there I can see the muscles doing that and then getting that beautiful rotation. She's going to bend that elbow in and press herself back up. One more, and the right arm comes under, placing the shoulder down, reaching it up, hold, maintaining that rotation, hips towards me, nice. And then bringing that left arm in, pressing yourself up. And other side, reaching it forward, hold, straight arm above the head. And when they're in this position, you can have them take a deep inhale. So the ribs move away and the spine's like, ooh. And then exhale into that rotation, and she could possibly get a little bit of clicking. Bend this elbow in, pressing yourself all the way up. This next one is pretty awesome. I love doing it. And I did do it with you guys right in the beginning. Right. So hands definitely more forward than your shoulders, because I'm going to take your body forward into like a plank. All right. She's going to tuck the pelvis through, super tuck, continue that movement as if she's doing a pelvic curl, getting to that point and extending the spine and trying to get that pelvis down. So you'll see her hands are even too close to her now. So we're going to shift it up for her, even more forward. Go for it. Yes, so much better. That's what I want. Now I want you, we're going to do this in two ways. Stick the bum out, not good for an anterior bulge or spondylolisthesis, and then round back here. Right, inhale. Exhale, tucking through, rolling all the way up. It's like a cat. And reaching it forward, opening the chest out, getting that stretch in the abdominals. Good. And then bum sticks out first, not for your clients who are struggling with quadratus lumborum. And tucking it through. This one will be for them. So we tuck it through, we open the chest out. To come back up, she's going to grab the abdominals, tuck the pelvis through, and reach it back. So there's two versions. And you move so our skin doesn't mix. And tucking through, taking it forward, opening the chest out. Good. And then bringing it up, tucking it through, and reaching it all the way back. Press back for me onto your feet completely. Good. So this position we all know, the child's pose, or what we call the rest position. Most people get stuck in this position either because their hip flexors are saying to you, you are shortening me so much, I've never done this and I don't like it. Or big calves, big hamstrings, and they cannot get their feet down. Or really tight in their quads, or a bigger upper body and they cannot drop down. So as much as we want to say this is such a cool position for the spine, it is really uncomfortable for a lot of people. So we have to be careful of that. Right. So I'm going to ask her to come up for me now. I absolutely love this movement with the ball. Why? Because we get to stretch the hip flexor into extension with the spine into extension at exactly the same time. So she's going to sit comfortably on the ball. And why I love this is you get to sit on the ball. So your client with your leg behind you. There we go. Right. So she's in that position. So I want a straight leg at the back and a flexed foot. Have your hands in front of you to start. All right, so her hands are in front of her. I want a straight knee, and I don't want her collapsing into her lower back. She's going to use her tummy to pull through there, and she's going to make sure that that hip is dropped forward. All I want her to do is rise up on her back foot's toes for me, and it's going to press her up towards the ceiling. So you just straighten it up. That's it. So it goes up, 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 hold it. And as you do that, I want you to lift your body up to the ceiling a little bit more. That's it. Just like that. Straight arms, straight arms. And then slowly control it back down. And then up on the toes, pressing it and lift, hold, getting that extension in the back, and then controlling it down. So I'm pulling this entire front. When you see they're fine, you move the hands back a couple of inches. Same thing. We go up on the toes, and this time I want you to arch your back, getting into those back extensors, but we've got a little bit of resistance in the abdominals and controlling it back, releasing the heel. And we bring it up and we open the chest out, reach and hold it, and gently release it. And last one, opening the chest out, and we keep it there for 5, 4, 3, exposed underarms, 1, and gently release it. Take it off there for me, please. Right, then I want to go back to the basic ones that you can remember that you can do. Why I love these ones is I actually do them with one of my elderly clients who is 83 years old, and it works really nicely for her. So you're going to sit on the edge there for me, please, and you're going to remember these ones. You're going to relax your arms by your sides. I start off by telling her up in the back, chin in slightly, extend thoracic. And then I just want her to reach this hand down as if she wants to pick something up, but she's not allowed to round forward. So I just want that gentle over as far as she can, and then gently bringing it up. And I don't even talk about effort or what's pulling her. And then she goes directly over to the other side, leaning over. And I always say, imagine it's far away from you, and you're going to reach for it and pick it up, and then pulling it back up. So it's not just down here, and reach for it far away, and gently bringing it up. And last one, we reach it far away, and then we slowly bring it back up. I then ask her to cross her arms over like that. And she literally has to keep her bum back into the chair, because the top of her chair is the perfect spot for her thoracic spine. Inhale here. Exhale, extend up and over the chair, just into that thoracic extension, and then release it back down. And exhale, just extending it up and over for that thoracic extension, and releasing it down. And one more, I have a hold it there, and we gently rotate. 1, rotating 2, and over 3, and over 4, and over 5, and last one, 6, bringing it into the center and slowly bringing it up. Keeping your arms relaxed by your side, shoulders and hips are anchored. You're going to rotate your head 1, and over 2, and nothing changes. 3, and over 4, and reach 5. Last one, 6, bringing it into the center. Bringing this arm up, pulling it across of the body, rotating the head to the same direction. Hold it for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm resting this elbow in my hand. So my arm is not being held up by anything. I'm resting it in my hand, and then gently release it. Bringing this arm up across the body, holding it, rotating the head in the opposite direction, holding it for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and gently release it. And then stand up for me, Carly. Giving you a whole bunch of extra stuff. Turn and face this way for me, please. You're going to interlace your hands behind your back. So many clients can't even do this. They look like that. They're not able to do this. If that's the case, you're going to give them a bar to hold. Take this right now. You can hold that behind your back. And you can hold it as wide as you need it. Okay? So let's have it a little bit wider. Pretend you can't do that. Okay. All right. So standing up tall, you can have them sitting if you don't want posture and everything to even be a consideration here. You just want them to get into the shoulders and open the chest out. You're going to inhale, open your chest out, reach your arms back for me, please. Now, if you are with them, I absolutely love saying cross the left leg over the right leg. And as you cross the left leg over the right leg, I rotate your body over towards the left. So her chest is looking at the left, and then bringing her back to the center, replace the leg. Over to the other side, and she rotates, and I pull that with her. So the leg is wanting to pull her that way, but the bar is pulling her this way. Abdominals, hold on for me, Carly, and bringing it back into the center. Open your legs a little bit wider. Now you want to teach them this. You press your right hip to the front, and as you do that, I pull your arms to the left. Bring it back, and we rotate the other direction. 2 and back, and rotating 3 and back. And last one, 4. Bring it back to the center. Open your chest to the ceiling as much as you can. And gently release it. Good, letting go of the bar for me. If your client can do this roll down, I absolutely love it. So relax your arms by your sides for me. Bend your legs slightly. You're going to inhale, chin in, exhale, curving down through the spine. I want you to go down so that you rest your chest on your thighs. That's it. Hold. From there, I want you to extend your back, reach your arms behind you as you do that, and then curve back down over your thighs. Not only is this doing mobility, but it's also getting the muscles to work. And we bring it up to that straight hold, don't overdo it, and then slowly curving it down. Head is last. And last one, bring it up and hold it there. Place both elbows on your knees, please. Both elbows. Interlace your hands. Yes, that's it. You're going to keep that position. I want you to press your elbows into your knees and extend your thoracic spine, arching your back. Beautiful. And release it. And pressing the elbows into the knees, opening the chest. Yes, they're working in their legs. It doesn't matter. And gently release it. Last one, pressing the elbows in, opening the chest out, gently drape the spine all the way over, hands on the floor. And I want you to try and get your clients to rest the chest on the legs. However, if they are not a hip flexor and they're more a spinal flexor, then they're really going to struggle to get to that point, and that's absolutely fine. When they roll up, they're going to drop the pelvis slightly as they gently peel the spine all the way up and relax. You can sit. Isn't that nice? I absolutely love it. I love anything to do with that. Right, so that is getting the spine to be a little bit looser and allowing it to have a bit more mobility. But you need to ask yourself this question: does every single client you have need that? Because I know clients that are hypermobile and they don't need this. In fact, half of their spasms will disappear if we can actually get them to activate and strengthen muscles. We want mobility in the spine, and a lot of our clients need it. I mean, some of my clients, if you do the side stretch, you're just like, wow. You desperately need that free movement. And it's always good when we're doing spinal stretching and it's very neural to not do it first thing in the morning, to give it a couple of hours or have a warm shower or a warm bath, or at night after you've had a warm bath, or at the end of the day, and then do those mobility movements with them. It'll be a lot more effective than a really tight neural system first thing in the morning. I want you to think of your clients who are really mobile in their spine, and you feel like you want to stop all of that mobility because the spine is playing, the discs are playing, and there's too much happening within the body. Those are the clients who also suffer with muscular spasms in the neck, in the back, in the QL. Remember that a spasm is there to give you input. The input is either, I'm on my own here. There is not a single another muscular friend around me that's helping me, and you're constantly standing in this position. So I'm going to have to give you a signal, so I'm going into a spasm. Or I'm the only one that's trying to hold on here, and I'm so long, you stretching me the whole time, that I'm going to have to give you feedback, and I'm going to have to give you a spasm. So when your clients are suffering with spasms and aches and pains in their backs, it's often due to the fact that it's either too short and it's on its own, or it's either too long and it's on its own. And all it needs is 2 or 3 of its synergistic friends to help maintain the position. And this is why I say the core is not playing a role here. Because if your client is standing like this the whole time and they have a QL spasm and you teach core activation and they don't have a biggish gut, it just doesn't give them that relief that they need long term. However, if you get them to get that feeling of that traction in the spine, the length in the body, the open shoulders, and the ability of the spine to move freer, and if necessary, flexibility in the front of the hip to stop this, or getting the back stronger to stop that, and teaching them that it's a light activation to change these positions, and they do that for an extended period of time, that's when the change happens. It's always about understanding that no two spines are the same, except if it's hereditary, then they possibly are. And we're not boxing people into a sway back posture, a kyphotic posture. We're breaking it up and we're putting them in different boxes. And we're understanding that some people are hypermobile and they can really do this with their spine way too much. They require global strength. To give you an idea, if I'm training, and I remember, especially when I was training a lot of dancers at a stage, a lot of them are so hypermobile in their spines that we would not do any flexibility whatsoever. It would only be strength training, and it would be strength training of the global muscles, because their movements are lower load when they're moving, and I need to get abdominals, latissimus dorsi, back extensors to kick in and hold them in their extension, because often they like to chill in their extension because it's so easy for them. It's a movement and a position that it's like second nature, and they hardly work to maintain it. So it's all about looking at the individual. How much mobility do we need? What is restricting this client right now in their mobility? And is it structural? Is it muscular? What are the pre-existing injuries or pathologies that they have? And I need to see them as an individual. Also remembering the anatomy and how you can look at things like scalenes, which are hypertrophic, but your client walks around holding their breath. Have a look this week to see how many of your clients can really let it all out. Use the rib cage fully, opening it out, closing it in, and allowing the upper torso to release. So that serratus posterior, superior, and inferior actually gets a chance to do their function. Don't forget, serratus posterior, inferior is there for the rotation of the spine, and it works with obliques, and it works with rotatories, and it works with the multifidus. How much it works is load dependent. Then remember that we have to start loading the backs a little bit more to get them stronger. We have to start working the necks more. Look at your clients' ranges when they go into that lateral flexion. I want you to see how much of that range is too much, or are they completely restricted? If your client has shoulder issues, neck issues, and upper back issues, and you do this and they get stuck here and they can't move any further, you know that this is an area that you need to release for them. Have a look. We're dealing with necks, but look at what the jaw is doing, because the jaw, a stiff jaw, is going to tell you that there's a lot of neck tension. They're carrying a lot of tension in their body, which is affecting shoulders, and it's affecting spines. When you do rotation of the spine, start with an inhale. When you're doing thoracic extension, always start with an inhale into extension, because it's a lot easier. It opens the rib cage out and it allows for that mobility in the upper back. Once you've done the inhale and you see, yes, they're actually getting this quite nicely, you now exhale into the extension, exhale into the rotation. So you give a little bit of an anchor point, and that anchor point is exactly where they're pivoting, which means you're now doing a little bit of a forced rotation, but it's going to give them that little bit of extra mobility and resistance. So you can take that rotation or that extension a little bit further. You then have clients who actually need flexion in the thoracic spine. Who are those clients? Those are your clients who do a chest lift and don't flex. They get stuck. When they do that roll down that Carly did right in the beginning, they cannot get that thoracic flexion. They don't get this. Okay, I've got a lot of thoracic flexion, but they don't get this thoracic flexion. They get stuck. They do a roll down, and this is what they look like. It's just flat. It's immediate that you know, well, if they're not feeling a stretch in the thoracic spine, they're not feeling the muscles releasing, I'm really going to struggle with ab work. So that's like half of your abdominal exercises are not going to work for them. And trying to force them to come up, what else is going to work if we do the abdominals the whole time? They're going to have to pull themselves up with their neck. We've said we want to train the neck, but we don't want to train the neck at the cost of it even being an abdominal exercise. How much supine ab work should we be doing? We want to strengthen abdominals, great. We mainly do supine ab work because we want the abs to look good and get flatter and start toning. But what do we really want to teach our clients? We want to teach them how to control the pelvis in a standing position. We want to teach them how to sit better in a seated position, because it's all of these things that are going to have a long-term positive results for their spine, rather than picking up loads and mobilizing everything. I hope that makes sense. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to stop you guys there. That timing was fantastic. I can't believe I did so well with the timing. I don't know about next week though, because it's pathologies. So we will be going through, if you want to know, it's in your book as well, scoliosis, disc issues, fusions, spondylolisthesis, and I'm going to chat a little bit about stenosis as well, looking at what we should avoid and what we should definitely do. And then looking at exercises, like if I say to you, you need to strengthen the back extensors, but you're not allowed to extend their spine. Then everybody's like, what? Because we know back extension is lie on your stomach and lift yourself off the mat. So we need to get the back stronger without extending the back. So we're going to be looking at things like that. So I want you to think of closed chain versus open chain, changing the angle of my body, bringing in a little bit of resistance and how I can tweak it. So you can already start thinking about what you're going to do there. Okay, right. So I'm going to let you guys go and have a wonderful weekend. This recording will be available over the weekend. Do give us a little bit of time because we do have to edit it, cut out a couple of things, and this thing has to render when I say goodbye now, and that takes about 2 hours in itself. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. If you have any questions about things that you'd like me to cover, please put it on here. Taryn will make a note of it. And then obviously at the end of the entire course, you get that questionnaire with the PDF answering all of your questions as well. And we had a really good idea. In fact, Taryn said to me, why don't you do a video answering all of the questions? So we might just do that as well. Okay, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And you'll get the recording soon. Take care. Bye.